my purpose for being up here is really twofold. I've been involved in startup companies since 1979, and I wanted to share some of my observations about what you're looking at, which is more than just demonstrations of very whiz-bang or dazzling technologies. There's actually a lot of people, different type of person behind each of these, and over the years I've come to know a lot of them. I never got to know Steve Jobs or Bill Gates, but the group of people I'll talk about are very interesting as well. And then secondly, to talk about the AutoHarvest Foundation, because actually everyone here can become a member for free. It was set up as a nonprofit foundation to help accelerate the adoption of innovation. And so we want to offer you something very practical that could actually help you in your career, help you in your business by being able to find new people to connect with and have commercial relationships for. So the way I'll get started is I want to show you a brief animation that was done by the Center of Creative Studies, which have an exhibit upstairs showing different types of vehicles. This is really the quintessential entrepreneurial white paper, but we did it as an animation in 2010, and then at the end I'm going to show a video by Ford and Visteon, which might show how things have actually evolved. So we'll start with a little video. It'll take about a minute.
In today's global landscape, there's a growing need for businesses, entrepreneurs, and inventors to more efficiently share intellectual property. Collaboration is essential to cultivating the advanced manufacturing ecosystem. Imagine a neutral meeting place where corporations, engineers, scientists, investors, and entrepreneurs connect and team up to transform intellectual property into new commercial uses for all industries. Envision a 21st century network that collaborates at unprecedented speed and scale. AutoHarvest and its roster of industry, government, and academic partners are blazing a path to fuel this renaissance. AutoHarvest will be the engine to drive the new economy by accelerating the adoption of innovation across the planet, all from the heart of the North American automotive cluster, Detroit. So come, join AutoHarvest, collaborate, innovate, and win.
Well, we're halfway there. You're in Detroit. That's pretty good. So I'd like to know if anybody in the audience, and I hope somebody will be able to raise their hand and tell me that they've been involved in startup companies before 1979. Thank God Pat is here. No, I'm officially not the oldest. So one of the things I want you to know is that this is a different world. It's always a different world. And this slide is the first startup company I became involved with during the highest misery index ever under Jimmy Carter, when it was 19.7, combining inflation and unemployment, and under Obama, it's the second best at 5.2. So you would say in these awful times, what could you really do? And you will see a couple pictures of my friend Wayne Silby in the hot tub, because when Forbes wrote about his startup, the article was called "Everybody Out of the Hot Tub." And startups can be a lot of fun, and Wayne is a financial genius and really reversed the laws of gravity in how financial markets work. And back in those days, it created one of the first money market mutual funds. I won't digress about what made it so magical. Suffice it to say, it was so well that it let him really grow it into what today is a multi-billion-dollar group of funds, financial funds, the Calvert Group. And these people never stopped. Wayne went on to really invent social investing. And just how the karma goes, if you go up the street, he's in Washington, D.C. That's a picture of us a couple years ago. 2 lifetimes later, there's a building being renovated in Detroit, and one of the financial groups supporting it is the Calvert Foundation. So they're helping create space in Detroit, and it all started in a hot tub. Pretty good. I went on to meet a person who really changed my life, and he actually changed, I think, the world, Ray Domanian. Ray invented MRI imaging, which back then was called NMR, and in 1981, again during this time when the Dow was 800, not 19,000, he's the one who figured out how to create body images using magnetism. And let me tell you, nobody liked him. He was brilliant. He was probably the most strong-willed person you'll ever meet. He made it happen, and the status quo, which I'll come to a little later on in one of the slides, the radiologists, they didn't like him. He was going to make everything very different, and they didn't understand it. And yet he went on to create something. Imagine going to a medical center today without an MRI machine. You probably wouldn't even go in it. He invented it. But you see, being an entrepreneur is very hard. That's why I'm doing these slides in the beginning, because you're meeting these people all around you, and they're going to be doing this, most of them, their whole lives, and they're going to go through ups and downs. You might be an investor, a friend, a strategic partner. You might catch up with them 2 deals from now. And these are really good people that you should get to know, even if you go by their booth and the thing they're demonstrating isn't exactly what you need or want today. You want to know them. In the case of Ray, and it's an important lesson why these little companies are here, they're here because they're looking for big brothers. Ray didn't have a big brother back then, and he lost the market. And the market, to put it kindly, was taken from him by, there you go, look at the article, General Electric. They paid him $130 million. Even Pat would admire that amount. It was the largest settlement for patent infringement at that time in 1993, and he went on to get rewarded with patent settlements. You could see the names of the other companies, but he lost the business. They took it from him because he wasn't strong enough financially to really preserve it. He also went on to be almost nominated for the Nobel Prize, which was given actually to the GE folks that took the technology even further. And that's when Ray took out a full-page ad in the New York Times to pan that decision. Do you get what I'm saying? People that change the world are really strong. They're really driven, and sometimes it could be very isolating, and sometimes you could be really alone, and that's when they need a friend. So this is one of my favorite ones. It's also at sort of the same time of the misery index, because we also, just to make it better, we elected Ronald Reagan and we had a recession. Before the Reagan Revolution, we had a bad year. And the Dow went down, I think, to about 800. And the fellow in the picture is really one of those great people in my life, Mickey Fouts, who hired me to help him in a small group take these crazy little companies public in one of the first NASDAQ companies. And coincidentally, at that time, a company that's very well known in this business, Gentex in Michigan, they were trying to get on their feet. They made smoke detectors for airplanes, and they started to import a mirror that would change based on the light for the rear view from Germany. And the whole company was valued at $15 million when it went public. $5 million public offering, $15 million. The company today is worth $6 billion. And they're now making advanced headgear for pilots. It's one of the 50 best manufacturers in the entire United States. And Mickey backed these guys. He saw it. Very few did. And he said, you know, anything is possible. And he had his own values. He stayed on their board for the next 25 years. And so, indeed, these companies are dreaming big. How did they get there? Maybe you can help them. This is another picture I really like because it has a few different things going on in it. The metamorphosis that change happens, that's what you're hearing about Detroit, what you're hearing about the industry. So what's going on in this picture, first of all, is myself and my partner, Dr. Cole, who's really just one of the most amazing people, not only for the automotive industry, not only for startups, but just in terms of values, and we'll get to him in a little bit. But the picture that is flipping is one of the original Buick dealerships in Detroit that became a Cadillac dealership, and now is becoming the largest project at Wayne State University, and is opening up now, which is their first really biomedical biotech facility. 30 years after a lot of them have been built, but it's really happening here. Now, the irony is that when it was a Cadillac dealership, one of the companies I started was the first biotech company, I think, in Michigan for medical, for human medical care. in cancer therapy. It was based in Houston, Texas at the MD Anderson Cancer Center, their first startup company. And that's been my license plate for the last 30 years. And the car was given to me by my board, because they were so happy, from that Cadillac dealership, which is now the Biotech Center. And that's across from where we are in Tech Town. And it just constantly reminds me about how things change and how things come full circle. So for me, that's a lot of fun. Now, in those biotech days, the technology I had at MD Anderson, as this article talks about, immunological Star Wars, that's very heady. And in fact, 30 some odd years later, the cover of Time magazine last year was on immunotherapy and this type of stuff working based on this type of technology, but it took a generation. Now, back to the entrepreneur, because that's sort of an interesting picture, a little bit tongue-in-cheek, and you see a young guy in the middle getting his face punched in, and that really sort of happened. And the guy punching him, you can read about him to the left. He won the Nobel Prize for inventing monoclonal antibodies and hybridomas, the cells that secrete the monoclonal antibodies, Dr. Milstein from the UK. And the technology we had at MD Anderson took that the next step and made it possible to use it as an in vivo therapeutic. So what's really going on? This is where you gotta love these entrepreneurs and be there for them. Imagine poor Dr. Redding, because that picture was taken at one of the largest medical conferences at the time, and he was there presenting all our great work, and so were so many others, and people that we hope would license it were there. And then a few speakers later was the keynote, Dr. Milstein. He invented everything. He won the Nobel Prize, so there's a hush. And one of the first things he said is, that guy that just spoke a few before me, he stole my technology. And it shouldn't be issued as a patent, and I'm upset. So poor Dr. Redding, I think we found him buried under 3 chairs in the back, totally devastated, right? This is really what happens. These guys have their necks out there. This stuff happens. Do they cower? Do you run from them? And the reason why everybody's smiling in the picture is the third person to the right, the biggest smile, at this meeting was a common friend. And we met Dr. Milstein. And what I could tell you is I made it very clear to him that he could use our technology for free whenever, however he wanted to. And he liked hearing that a lot. So he agreed to take the picture to freeze in time this very awkward moment, because intellectual property is very controversial about who owns it, who invented it. Is it my idea? Is it your idea? And AutoHarvest is all about collaboration and getting people together, so perhaps those issues are fewer, but it could be dramatic, and that's a long time ago. Now, you never quite know how things will work out with these technologies. One of the things I like about this conference is so many of the technologies legitimately are about saving lives and reducing injuries, and I've been involved in that. So a little bit later, I met Alfred Zaffaroni, who is one of the all-time great biotech developers. His company Alza was bought by Johnson & Johnson for $8 billion and almost went bankrupt in the 70s and was bailed out. And he had 2 technologies, transdermal drug delivery, which is what made his company worth $8 billion, and artificial blood. And I became his partner in artificial blood, and it was licensed to 7 companies who invested $1 billion, and it never made it to being useful for human beings. The Navy was the big sponsor. But one night when our dog, not that one, unfortunately that's the replacement dog, became ill, we had to rush her to the vet, and she had jaundice and hemolytic anemia. It was unbelievable. To save her life that night, the vet ran in the back, got a bag of artificial blood, put it in the dog, kept her alive that night, and it was made by my licensee. It was a good comeuppance for me to see that happen. That fancy machine came from the University of Wisconsin. It's a medical spin-out. That's my oncologist. When we started AutoHarvest, unfortunately, I found out from a routine physical that I had cancer and that I would need surgery in a few days. And And ultimately, I had so many friends who had grown up in biotech. I had 7 oncologists, radiation treatment. And I remembered a few years earlier that the governor of Michigan, who then was a venture capitalist, I was at an awards dinner, he won a Deal of the Year for investing in a company called Tomotherapy that was a spin-off in the University of Wisconsin. It was a new way to deliver radiation. I actually remembered this. There were only 6 machines around the country. I decided that was going to be my better bet. So I called up, and this is a club of people. These are people that are going to be your friends, and you can get other information. And I remember this, so I called up the lead investor from Wisconsin and said, you know, this is my predicament, and you think your machine can help me? And it was unbelievable because when we started to talk about it, he really welled up and he actually started crying on the phone. And this is how crazy this business is. And he told me that he should never have really made the investment and that the deal at the start was very flaky and it wasn't quite for him. But he did it emotionally because his brother died 2 years earlier from the cancer I had. And now he is going to see the machine save me and a few other people who've come along the way. This is really what happens. And these people working on the mobility and avoiding collisions, let me tell you, you're going to be thanking them years later. So things move on, and again, I wanted to do these first slides to just talk about people, and you don't know what's going to happen or how things evolve. And I went on to have a chain of art galleries with 2 partners, the largest in the country, 13 locations. And my landlord for our most profitable gallery in a lot of measures is going to be inaugurated next week. And I have a lease signed with Donald Trump. So it's amazing how it turns out. So at a time when the intellectual property was working with people like Peter Max for license rights to art, lo and behold, we had an art gallery in Trump Tower, and that kind of fits the presentation only because of what happened. You never know where it's going to go. Now, this is a picture of my partner, Dr. Cole, who's very well known. David started the Center of Automotive Research in Ann Arbor. He was the person who really made the management briefing seminars for 30 years, the go-to place for automotive technology and industry awareness. And was a professor at University of Michigan for 35 years, so folks like the CTO of General Motors were his student. And David is a very successful investor in small companies. He grabbed onto this vision with me. I'm so indebted to him. So you say, where did he get the bug? I know I got my bug back in the hot tub. You saw that picture. Well, this is his father on the cover of Time magazine, who at the time was put on it because he invented, you see the quote, the most profoundly revolutionary car ever, the Corvair. And he then went on to become the president of General Motors. And just because I wanted his father to be here, look at his motto, kick the hell out of the status quo. Ed Cole was really a titan, but you see, you don't know where it's going to go. So the Pulitzer Prize winning author, right, Agracia, that's there with his book, Engines of Change, if you read the quote carefully, what he's telling you is that the safety problems that became very infamous with the Corvair gave rise to Ralph Nader. And well, if that didn't happen, then probably Florida would have went differently, and we would have had a different president. So he wrote it. He won the Pulitzer Prize. He connected the dots. Do you really know how far an innovator's impact goes? I'm thinking probably not. So last one of these types of slides. This is a great one because Dr. Colt, in starting AutoHarvest, always liked to say, let's make serendipity routine. And he would love to tell the story about the person you meet by happenstance on the airplane. So a number of years ago when I was flying from Detroit to Moscow through Amsterdam, of course I was in the back in the cheap seats and I had a broken seat. And back in those days, the airlines were a little more accommodating and they said, you know what? We have an empty seat in business class. We're going to put you up there. My only time. And it turns out I got to sit next to J.T. Battenberg, the General Motors executive, who at the time, literally in his briefcase, was drawing up how they're going to spin off Delphi. And then he later hired me to help Delphi get into creating companies based on our intellectual property, which was the largest in the industry. So serendipity happens, things come full circle. These are people you need to get to know beyond what's on the demo table. There's more there. They will be around. They're going to impact your friends and family for a long time. So now sort of a little bit back to AutoHarvest. I really appreciate you indulging in this, but I think it helps create a different mindset for what you've seen the last few days. So in the deep, dark days of this industry, which were really just a few years ago in 2009, at Delphi with Dr. Cole, we were really looking at convening a group, which we did, and I'll show you, to talk about how this industry would reemerge, how technology would flow into it at a time when we were firing so many people and closing so many things, and everything was bankrupt, including the city, right, and the nameplates, everything. And we decided we would really look at creating a community and tapping into the emerging online capabilities to do it, of trust, and then that leading to commercial opportunity and bringing in the crowd. And then this little orange thing I added the other day, because I think that's the take home for me in a few words about this entire event. What is coming? The emerging mobility paradigm. What are we really getting to? We're getting a connected, multi-mode transportation powering a blockchain-enabled, green, personalized lifestyle. And that's a mouthful. And it's going to take everybody in this room and a lot of other big places to make that happen and figure it out. And I hope we're a part of it. In those days, the White House was not yet, had developed a manufacturing strategy. A large document was in preparation, and we reached out to the first Chief Technology Officer of the United States, Dinesh Chopra, and said, we have this way to make technology free and unleash it and make it in the hands democratically of big and little and get all these groups together. And he says, I don't know what you're talking about. It sounds good, but if you could put it on one slide that makes sense, maybe I'll help you. That's the slide. He came to Detroit. We held a town hall meeting at Ford and launched AutoHarvest as a way to create, based on Covisint, the existing supply chain system in the industry, and the emerging capabilities of Google and Facebook and LinkedIn and Wikipedia, a system that would empower people, give them unfettered access to IP opportunities, IP for licensing, for sale, for collaboration, people with needs. And indeed, these 12 different stakeholder groups do comprise the active forces behind innovation, and they really have no place to get together. Maybe today in Cobo Hall, and this is a pretty big temporary space, they could do it here. And so we said, let's try to create a team of rivals. And that's really what we needed to do. We needed to bring rivals together to show that together they could create something they can't do alone, that they want, and that they can be competitive in it. And so our board that designed this with us, you see there a layer of OEMs, led by Ford, our chair, GM, Hyundai, FCA, the universities, Ohio State, they have an exhibit, University of Michigan has an exhibit, MIT, Center for Automotive Research, DOE with N-Rail, and then the suppliers, Delphi, Visteon, United Technologies, Forcia, and earlier 3M, and Johnson Controls. And these folks all got together to help us create our system. And in creating this system, we decided to populate it with a friends and family. This is very much a skunk works in the traditional Lockheed. We're in 2 locations, University of Michigan offices and Wayne State's R&D Park. And so those stakeholder groups, we populated them. There's 380 members, and they use this system to get together. And why does this matter? Well, these comments I think you hear about all the time. R&D is changing, the disruptive technology. There's technology in adjacent markets that are siloed that can transition over. You see this all around this room and upstairs. There are new people in the patent arena that have a financial interest, and unexpected collaborations can really lead to great results. And I think as people look at globalization differently, one of the strengths of globalization has been to bring so many brilliant, in my opinion, minds together around common problems. And so this system strives every day to do that. The other thing that has changed as you try to understand this, 10 years ago for sure, 5 years ago not as much. At the C level, read annual reports, innovation, sometimes that word didn't really appear very much in it. And there was no chief innovation officer or intellectual property officer. There was maybe a CTO or a head of R&D, and there were product strategies, market strategies, but maybe not an innovation strategy. That's different. I don't think you could be a CEO today and not present to your board a long-term with short-term step innovation plan to stay relevant and not become companies that have become premature really before their time, like Kodak, and people know that. So if you're an innovation, the CEO is your buddy. So with what we've done in AutoHarvest also, because we're a startup, and I told you the White House in 2011 helped us launch it, we're really very pleased that last year Accenture did a whole study about innovation, and they concluded that digital shoring for network innovation, their terminology, is the new must-have tool. And they singled out AutoHarvest as the pioneer and best practice leader for virtual communities, also citing Harvard, London Business School, Mass Bio, and the automotive industry group Geneva as groups that have embraced the internet to grow a community in different ways. And I'm here to tell you that this is one click away. You could become part of the community and see opportunities. So as I go around the world and talk about this, you'll see this slide. In English and Chinese, I could tell you we have active partnerships in China. We are all about win-win. There's a lot of controversy about China. The automotive industry has benefited so much from China that it's highly arguable that major companies in the United States wouldn't exist today after the downturn if they didn't have such major profitable operations in China. And all of the companies see the growth in China in automotive. That's where the numbers are. The technology is going like crazy. And just a couple things to keep in mind about collaboration and going after win-win. This is a country that has 10,000 startups a day being created. And if you go near the University of Peking, so you get to maybe some of the, let's say, higher end areas doing innovation, right, near Peking University in Beijing, they're doing 49 a day. And I think it's going to be very important to have bridges and strategies so we get into collaboration. This is a global industry, but we are not just the source of innovation. It's not just Silicon Valley and Detroit, which a lot of the talk is always about here as we build our bridge, and we've done that as well in AutoHarvest with Auto Tech Council 2 years ago, but beyond. And so we have our eyes on China and do a lot there. The next 4 slides are really a lot of fun because I'm looking at a few companies that are very close to us to look at how they've changed and how they're adapting. And so if you look at Ford and its growth in certain areas of advanced engineering expertise, you'll see the building blocks they have put together of going beyond their 4 walls, getting involved with universities. And then when you look at 2016, they have 3 startup companies that they've called out. Several have been here at this event. So you see companies like Ford starting to really embrace innovation differently. And what I like to show people, because we do work well with them, that in 2011 they did a press release that was really very different at the time. It included AutoHarvest, that Ford really wanted to urge everyday inventors to build, create, and sell technology. They wanted to be a catalyst. They got involved with AutoHarvest, Tech Shop. And then, of course, you know, if you work at it, you get a result. And let me tell you, 5 years later in December, the news came out of the Washington Post that Ford in 2016 developed more patents than any other group in the automotive industry and turned thousands of their employees and staff into inventors and created a culture that made the idea of innovation not so lofty, more practical, approachable, something they would support. And now the whole Ford system is a little different, and I think there's a big lesson to learn there. Years at Delphi. Delphi, when I joined, was the world's largest automotive supplier. Now it is probably, without a doubt, the premier, one of the premier high-end electronic companies that are really putting together the complete nerve system and brains for automated driving. And everybody knows they sent one of their vehicles last year, 2,400 miles around America, 99% in autonomous mode. And this has an impact on the culture, talent, recruitment, training. The value of the people in this room to these companies is very different. Another company that is considered by many to be kind of traditional is Lear, right? Seats, they're vertically integrated seat manufacturers. So I asked them, how many software engineers did you have in 2005? And they looked it up for me. They had 50, probably all working on getting Windows and Office to work, right? Now they're over 600. It's very common now to talk to a tier one supplier and hear that more than half of the engineers are software, fewer and mechanical. So the talent pool, the way facilities are designed, the way information moves around is being greatly impacted in the company, not just in the marketplace, so that they can harness the technology, innovate to deliver these things. To be a good partner to these smaller companies requires a lot of internal expertise, so different issues don't happen with the small companies. So when I see companies like Lear becoming not just very high tech, but creating also a different innovation culture, it's very reinforcing that we can absorb the startups and make them partners in new products. Another company I really enjoy spending time with because they really have embraced the big picture of the connected life, everything in your life is Panasonic. My first stereo was a Panasonic. I think it took 6 big batteries and played 45s, and at the end they would keep spinning around. Let me tell you, their partnership with IBM, with Watson in the cloud, to collect this data, make it available based on where you are, what you're doing, to create intelligence that you can act on, transact on, is extraordinary. And that's, of course, where everybody is going. And that funnel they're showing you shows as they bring in resources, it's not just from Japan, not just from Panasonic, not just from the Valley. That funnel is a big funnel. And so again, we have different people, whether it's Ford or Delphi or Lear or Panasonic, that couldn't have shown these slides 5 years ago. This is an exciting time to be interacting with them. And so we did a little bit of a search with one of our terrific conference organizers, the MEM Journal, and a little while ago they found 683 small companies that are involved in these different buckets in connected cars. And indeed, if you talk to Mark Fields, who wants his company to disrupt like a startup and embrace startups, these are the folks. These are the people that are having the bets put on them. These are the people that are looking for strategic partners. These are people moving technology around that's going to help create a different paradigm. It says 683, it's probably 5,000. It just shows you how many, and you wouldn't have found a handful 10 years ago. One of the core tenets we have, and we do see it happen more and more, is especially in the larger companies when inventors and R&D is driven around improving current product, inventions are siloed, staffs are limited, and I like to say if somebody came up with a great coating for a piston, the people that make pacemakers might not know it's available to make that pacemaker sit in your body better. And being able to have a mechanism where you could see what other people are doing, apply your creativity, your unique needs, your different mega trends to it, avoid that redundant R&D. This is the low-hanging fruit. It is all over our network. The way the network works is through search. You put in a keyword, whether it's carbon fiber or LiDAR. You will see populated opportunities by members, by small companies, by the thousands that are integrated in the system to see what's available for tech, who has a need that, this is the only platform in the world where 2 guys and a dog in a garage can see a need by a Fortune 50 company, click on it, show why that large company should consider them, and then that directly, privately goes to the real right person in that large company that nobody could ever find to look at, so he could tap back, no thank you, or tell me more. And that's the power really behind this type of speed dating system. We know to create a community, it's all about knowledge. We have a partnership with the U.S. Patent Office. It's grown, so we have about 28 groups that provide smart tools that would be of interest to people in advanced manufacturing, whether it's databases, software, content, services. These are groups that can help different innovators, big and small, be able to understand what they're working on, where it fits in the marketplace, where it has value, problems, and be able to find resources. We grow this in our newsletter. We offer free downloads. We're a nonprofit foundation. We want the knowledge base to grow dramatically. We help organize a lot of events. I just received a little bit earlier a program we're going to put on now for the second year in Detroit with the leading organizer of intellectual property conferences, and it's called IP in the Auto Industry. It's going to be May 4th in Detroit, and it's going to bring in a group 200-300 people that never really get together to talk about IP in the auto industry, which is a big topic. So as I start to sort of wind up the traditional presentation, if you go back, and I'll show you what Ford and Visteon have to say. If you join, just go to the website. It says join. There's a couple questions. We'll send you a password. We let you, for free, cast a wide net, put yourself in a visible mode. Nothing is confidential. It doesn't matter that all systems are hackable. There's nothing here to steal. You create your own relationships, and they lead to helping you grow your business plan and get a new partner. The media has said some very nice things about us. There's really, whether it's local media or media focused on IP or innovation, they seem to find our interface, which is pictured here, to be very straightforward and very accessible. So I've said a lot. We're going to let some others talk now.
I'm Bill Coughlin. I'm the CEO of Ford Global Technologies, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of the Ford Motor Company. And I'm sitting here in my office in Dearborn. Ford is absolutely driven to be a leader in innovation. And so we are trying to move in a much more open, collaborative, working together philosophy. AutoHarvest works in two ways. First, people can go online and post what state those technologies are in that they're willing to license, and shows an openness to reach out. But additionally, networking is really important, and AutoHarvest helps in that respect as well, to try to bring people together, because we haven't had a facility like that that's a neutral ground for people to post what they want to do, what technologies they have available, and try to form a community around that. So when you think about it, to expand the technology, often it's more than just one company. And that kind of collaborative work needs a third party to help in many cases. And AutoHarvest, I think, is going to be a terrific addition to our industry to make deals like this happen.
AutoHarvest is an online community of innovators and commercializers in the area of advanced manufacturing, seeking a go-to location to interact with other members to find solutions for technical problems. It allows buying, selling, and transacting in intellectual property and access to smart tools that help people commercialize and create tomorrow's products.
Hello, I'm Tim Yurden, Director of Innovation and Design at Visteon Corporation, based here in Southeast Michigan and Van Buren Township. I'm responsible for a variety of things, but most importantly is looking out to what is the future of mobility in the automotive industry for the products that we play in. The key to innovation is really tying people together, and the best way to do that is to have the proper platform that does that. And one of those platforms that's key is AutoHarvest. We at Visteon have only taken advantage of the tip of the iceberg of this innovation platform. When you look at what's still yet below the waterline, the communities, the collaboration opportunities, the technologies that are out there in this marketplace. Those are the things that are the real opportunities as we expand this tool and use it for the future. If you want to win in whatever product area you play in, you really need to drive this collaboration effort forward. And by collaborating across these different entities and having a tool such as AutoHarvest to bring it together, that's what's going to make us all successful for the future.
So I think it's really fitting that the motto that's on the City of Detroit insignia for this whole event is, we hope for better things. It will rise from the ashes. And I think as we look around, 150 plus years since that motto was created in Detroit, we're watching it happen again. And I'm just really happy to be a part of it with you. Thank you very much.